Hello, lovely listeners. Welcome to Coffee House with Bernice. Today we're going to do another episode talking about my trip for the Jubilee of Youth. It's special because today I'm actually going to talk about my experience going to St. Peter's, both in the square and to the actual basilica. And one of the funny things about going to the St. Peter's Square is that you actually pass by the Canadian Embassy. I thought that was just a really fun fact to let you know, since I'm Canadian here, and to let you know that even though we're at the heart of the church almost, the heart of where Jesus has put the rock of St. Peter, that you can still find the embassy of your home in that area. For the day we went to St. Peter's, it was actually one of the start of when we arrived to Rome. We had to start the day very early as we wanted to make sure we had a nice spot to be able to observe Mass to see the Pope. How early it was? It was very early. Mass was around 6 p.m., maybe 7 because it always starts a little later. But we had to start going right after lunch. I believe we arrived at the square around 2 p.m. and we weren't allowed to get our seats until 4. So think about how much time we spent outside under the sun just so that we can have a nice spot for Mass and to be able to see the Pope. When we first arrived at the square, it was really spectacular to see all of the different youths of our Catholic faith being so happy, so joyful. It was very loud, and you can see all the different colors of everyone wearing their flags, waving their flags, and people dancing in the square. There was also people singing songs of praises, and it is definitely a spectacular sight. Although on the first day we didn't actually enter the basilica, as the Mass was actually to happen in the square. So unfortunately, we didn't get to go in that day, but we were still able to see the beauty of St. Peter's Basilica from the outside. You can see all of the saints that are adorning the walls, and also how beautiful and big that basilica is. There's also so many structures around, a whole street that leads you all the way, and your eyes goes and looks, and you see St. Peter's Basilica as you walk down the square. Along the squares, you also see a bunch of shops, and because there are so many people, you can also see the police, the fire trucks, and the ambulances along the street as well, to see their support in making sure that we were safe. Along those shops, there are so many shops that are selling different things, such as icons of our beloved saints, our beloved Mother Mary, as well as coffee shops, which I actually decided to go in and grab a nice cup of iced coffee. And one of the funny things inside of this coffee shop was that since it was so hot, I asked them for 2 cups of iced coffee, one for myself and one for my friend. But I guess my Italian wasn't too good, as it got lost in translations, and we got 2 cups of boiling hot water. We were feeling very refreshed from that. And after we enjoyed our cup of iced coffee and our cup of hot water, we decided to leave the coffee shop. But unfortunately, when we came out, the street was empty. There was no longer those youths that we were talking about singing and dancing on the street or all the flags waving in the air. But it was dead silent. It was surprisingly silent. And then we realized they had cleared the square. And since we were already inside the cafe and we weren't kicked out of the square, we decided to stay in and sit inside until everything was clear. And I felt like this was such a blessing that I was actually inside this cafe at this time, because I had access to water, to food, to air conditioning, and a nice seat. And I also got to meet the other fellow pilgrims that were sheltered in this cafe during that time. I think this happened around maybe 2:30 or 3, and I was saying that the gates for the doors for the seats didn't open until after 4. So we were basically in this cafe for over an hour, having all of these amenities. And again, I just felt so blessed in that moment, because I had other fellow pilgrim friends that weren't so lucky. They were actually sitting outside when I went inside the cafe, and they were ushered out of the street. They were all behind the barricade, past St. Peter's Square, and they were all waiting, squished shoulder to shoulder under that blazing afternoon sun. As you can see, I will share some photos with you to show you how cramped that must have been. But from their stories, even though they were standing there for hours in that sun, touching shoulder to shoulder, skin to skin, feeling other people's sweat, they were still be able to praise the name of Jesus. They were saying that they were chanting that we are the youth of the Pope. They were singing praise and worship songs, and they were having just as much of a fun time as I was with the other pilgrims inside of the cafe. Afterwards, when we first started noticing from the window of the cafe that the barricades were down, you can see a couple individuals sprinting down the street. And that's when we knew the floodgates were opened. And those of us inside the cafe scrambled to pick up everything that we had, put away all of our dishes, and we also ran out of the cafe. It was very funny. We were running, and as we were running, I was able to get reunited with the friends that were behind the barricade. And we actually have 3 different perspectives of this run. We were saying we did a 100-meter dash to get a good seat for the Pope. And it was really funny because I did not believe that I would be running for the Pope. But in that moment, in the spur of the moment, it was very exciting. Like, I wanted to be there, also in the front. And what was even funnier is that we had a sister with us who had a bubble gun so that we would not be separated. We're always like, where the bubbles are is where the sister is. And as we were running, we were like, follow the bubbles and run! And luckily, due to these efforts, we actually did get quite a front row seat. We weren't the first group, but we were within the first area, right next to the altar. So we had quite a clear view of the altar, of all of the fathers up there, and the celebrant of the Mass. And luckily, when that happened, everyone was scrambling. Everyone made sure that we saved enough seats for our friends. We were even standing on top of those plastic chairs that were baking in the sun to be like, we're over here. And it got to a point where the security thought it was very dangerous and asked everyone to sit back down. But luckily, we saved enough spots and we were able to get everyone back. Even those that were stuck outside from security, we were able to go and grab them. And we're saying, praise Jesus for that we were able to reunite as a group. Since we were sitting outside for so long, we were actually able to meet all of the other pilgrims that were around us. We actually sat next to a very large group of Mexicans. And they were one of the sweetest people. Only like 1 or 2 of them really knew how to speak English, but we were able to converse with the whole group. We tried things through finding the Spanish speaker on our side, as well as finding the English speaker on their side, to stuff like using Google Translate. Since we were there for so many hours, we really bonded. We traded snacks, and one of them even gave me a pin of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I just felt like this was such a God moment, as that was also the moment that I noticed the Jesus pin I had on my hat was missing. And I felt so providential that I got Mama Mary to help take over the spot. Little did we know that on the other side of the barricade, because there's an aisle for all the priests to walk down to get to the altar, on the other side of that aisle was actually the Toronto OCY group, the Office of Catholic Youths group. That was the official pilgrim group that our diocese orchestrated. So since I didn't go with them, I didn't really expect that I would be able to share these experiences with them. But little did I know, they were on the other side of the barricade. And they were able to see me, and we were able to wave to each other and scream our hellos. And it was really cute to see pictures from both sides. It was many hours in the hot sun, and it was actually so hot to the point that someone had a moment of dizziness and almost fell over, and they had to sit down for the rest of the day. But I will say, even though that happened, there was still the dedication of us wanting to be here for Mass and to be able to see the Pope. And it is such a beautiful witness to see that. And what was even more beautiful was as the sun started to set, it actually started setting behind St. Peter's Basilica. And the first thing that blocked out the sun was the wood of the cross that was held by one of the saints on top of the St. Peter's Basilica. We all have human needs, so part of the situation was us needing to go to the bathroom, next to millions of other youths that were contained in St. Peter's Square. But even in those tiny moments, we're able to find other Catholics and share our story. In line, I was able to bond with some girls from South America. And it was really funny because all we really did was chat about stuff like how long the wait was, and that we were right next to the papal window where the Pope does the Sunday Angelus. We're just going to the bathroom, but can you believe how much of a gift it is for us to see that window that you see online from your TV, but it's real in front of our eyes at that moment. Other funny moments of this experience was one of the priests just showing up on the roof of St. Peter's Basilica and waving to the crowd.
Wow, everyone's screaming! Oh, he's waving at us! I don't think that's the Pope, though. Okay, bye, Mr. Priest.
No one knew who he was, but everyone just started cheering and screaming as if it was the Pope. And I found that was just really funny. And I feel like that also shows the outcome of what's about to happen. As we were waiting, as the sun starts setting, we actually got news that the Pope wasn't celebrating Mass with us. And that actually caused quite of an uproar, as everyone got quite sad and some even upset that they thought we came all the way over here to see the Pope, but they didn't get a chance to see him. But we tried to remind ourselves as a group that even though the Pope isn't here, Jesus was. And the importance of the Mass isn't that it's being celebrated by the Pope, but that the Mass is celebrating of Jesus' sacrifice for us. And with that, we calmed our hearts and we continued waiting for Mass. And as expected, Mass was as beautiful as ever. The celebrant spoke so many languages that his opening remarks, he repeated it almost 6 times in different languages. In English, in French, in Italian, in Spanish. He just kept going and actually lost us for a little bit, and the translators. But it was actually really surprising because the celebrant was actually the auxiliary bishop who later signed our certificates of completion of our pilgrimage to Rome. And I felt everything comes back in a big circle when it shows this way. And after Mass, after a beautiful, beautiful Mass of singing of all different languages, we were surprised with the Pope. He was like, I didn't come to Mass, but here I am. He came to address us. And everyone went crazy. It was like, I need to see the Pope. He's actually here. No way. It got actually a little out of hand because everyone just started screaming, standing on their chairs again after we were asked to sit back down. And people started running and squishing the people at the barricades, and all the phones were up in the air because we were surprised with the Pope. All of that anxiety and all of that sadness that we had at the beginning of when we first heard that the Pope wasn't here, it was replaced with excitement, surprise, and happiness, and our filial love towards our Holy Father. And as we await for his Pope-mobile to drive past us, everyone was just chanting all different things. The main one, again, with how we normally hear, is the one that we are the youth of the Pope, but also different singing chants of the Pope's name. And I will say, you just have to kind of be there to experience it. But think of a nice concert that you might have been to, and then times that excitement by 10, and everyone cheering the same thing. And one of the sillier parts about this is that everyone kept cheering. Even when nothing happened, it'll die down, and all of a sudden people start screaming, and everyone will get excited, being like, is the Pope next to us right now? Is he here? Can we see him? But this happened for over 10 minutes, as the Pope was still not next to us. And this is because the Pope-mobile went around St. Peter's Square to greet the pilgrims, but he also continued down the street of Via del Corsilanzione. Sorry for me butchering the name of the street. But basically, he went down the street that connects St. Peter's Square all the way to the western bank of the Tiber River. So he drove to see every single pilgrim that was there that night. And it was just really lovely that he would give us this time of his to see all of us. And his smile warmed my heart when he passed by me. And then he walked up and gave his address. As the Pope drove past us, it was really great to be able to see him face to face. And such a lovely way to end the night that he was able to surprise us with his visit. I would love to tell you more about that night, but I urge you to watch his address yourself. And with that, I would like to conclude today's story, and I'll share more about my actual visit inside the St. Peter's Basilica next time. And with that, thank you so much for listening to Coffee House with Bernice, and I hope you have a blessed day.